Hello again, this is Corey Barnett of the Cartersville Church of Christ, and this is another edition of Corey and Kids. Let's start off as we normally do with the books of the Bible. If I ask you how many are total, you would tell me 66. How many in the Old Testament? 39. How many in the New Testament? 27. Let's start off with the New Testament this time. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, Jude, and Revelation. 27 books in the New Testament. To the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. 39 books of the Old Testament. Put the 39 and the 27 together, and you have the 66 books of the Bible. For this edition of Corey and Kids, I want to talk about something that I have a feeling a lot of our young folks will see during their summer break from school. If you go outside onto your driveways or you go out into the yard, you're going to probably come across at some time or other an ant. And while ants are very small, and a lot of times we may not pay very much attention to them, if you ever do watch them closely, you'll notice that they are busy working quite often. And it is amazing to think about all of the work that they do, as small as they are, with how much they can lift compared to their body size and weight. But a lot of folks just simply do not pay attention to the ant. But God does. As a matter of fact, God mentions the ant in His Word on more than one occasion. I want to go to one area where He mentions about the ant in Proverbs chapter 6. I'll begin reading at verse 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. That is Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11. God takes notice of the ant. Obviously, He created the ant, so therefore God understands the ant better than even we do. But God wanted to use the ant in His Word to try and get to us to understand the value of work. And that is something that I want to speak to our young folks about today. I know that it's probably not the most enjoyable thing whenever your mom and dad give you chores to do around the house. But instead of looking at them in a negative way, I want you to start developing in your lives a positive look at work. It is a good thing to learn young at age. You need to learn early that working is not a bad thing. On the contrary, working gives us a lot of satisfaction. It allows us to be busy doing things that are good instead of things that are evil. And as a matter of fact, as the ant is used in Proverbs 6, we can find that while we work, we provide the things that we need. Now, ultimately, yes, God is the provider of those things, Matthew 6:33. But we are responsible for doing our parts. Again, the ant is to be considered. It has no guide, it has no overseer, it has no ruler. In other words, there's not a boss that's right there always telling it what to do. And it's like mom and dad not having to always tell you, go clean your room. You know your room needs cleaned periodically, clean your room. Or maybe your mom and dad say, do the dishes. You see the dishes in the sink or in the dishwasher? Do the dishes. Or you know that clothes need to be folded. Help fold the clothes. You don't need someone to tell you all the time. And I can assure you of this, I'm pretty confident that if you start doing it without your mom and dad telling you, that is going to be something that they really appreciate and that they will take notice of you doing so. So again, the ant is a good example of work. The ant provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. The work needs to be done when it needs to be done. If you wait too long to do some works, it is too late, and then you have to suffer the consequences. And we need to make sure that we don't let ourselves become a sluggard. What that means is someone who's lazy and doesn't get to work doing what he or she needs to do. And we need to make sure we do all that we can when we can, so that when the time comes, we will have what we need. A little sleep is mentioned there, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. Yes, there are times we're going to need rest, but let's be very frank. A lot of times we probably could be doing more than we are. We need to understand the value of work. We don't need to be lazy. And one of the things that will help us to remember that is when we go outside and we see that ant working, Remember, God has already told us in His Word we ought to consider her ways. This is Corey Barnett, and this has been another edition of Corey and Kids.